Hey everyone, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Everybody here? Nobody here? Where's everybody? Hello? Live chat. Okay, here we go. Let's go back. How you doing, guys? Okay, first question from Jordan Schroeder. By the way, of course, guys, if you wish for me to answer your questions, you have to be a super chat donor. Great to see you all. Finished the semester. I'm feeling good. I'm excited. Submitted the galley proofs of my book. It's now gone into press. Don't forget to pre-order your copy of The Sad Truth About Happiness, 8 Secrets for Leading the Good Life. So let's jump in. So question 1 from Jordan Schroeder, the first super chat donor. Thank you so much, Jordan. Gad, I've heard that sex differentiated dress is something that is universal across cultures. True. What is the evolutionary basis of this? Well, it depends what you mean by sex differentiated dress. There's a tribe in the Wadabi people in across Europe, not Europe, Africa, who actually it's the men who beautify themselves in the way that you would typically think that the ladies would be beautifying themselves. I think it's called the Jiruwal ritual, if I'm not mistaken. So I think what the universal element is that both men and women use sex specific cues, sartorial cues, dress cues to impress the opposite sex in the mating market. But there were cases where it was men who wore high heels. Think about the Louis XIV days, because in that case you're trying to be taller. So, but in general, there are certain sex specific clothing that you typically would find, but it's not quite a universal. It's maybe a near universal. Thank you for that question, Jordan. Let's move on to Bob the Terrible. Is it puzzling that human males don't guard their mates constantly, given the high cost of cuckoldry? Do intelligence and communication play a role? Well, so there are some interesting studies that look at, for example, the amount of time that you are away from your female partner will determine the extent to which you might engage in guarding strategies. And what there are some research that shows that the amount of sperm that you deliver, if you like, in a mating encounter with your partner, uh, goes up or down depending on the likelihood of her having cuckolded you if you were away. So there are definitely some contingent mechanisms that either increase or decrease the the alacrity with which you engage in mate guarding. I would say, though, that probably the number one predictor of that is the uh, sense of confidence that the male possesses. Men who need to use uh, threats and violence to guard their partners usually have low mating value. The guy who stands very confidently in terms of his mating value, he knows that the likelihood of his partner cheating on him goes down the higher his mate value is. So there you go. Thank you, Bob the Terrible, for your question and for your donation. Let's move on to the next person. Marvin Gunz just gave a donation. Thank you so much. Again, people, I forgive me for saying this, but I respond to people who I appreciate everybody being here, but I go through the people who uh, donate via super chats and so on. Paul Butala, thank you so much for your contribution. The Rational Male series, have you read it? Rolo Tomaso said he would like to do a pod class. What's a pod class? I don't know if that's different from a podcast. Uh, I have heard many times from, I guess, his fans. I don't know if it's his fans or if it's his burner accounts, from many people saying that he wishes to chat with me. I have no reason to not want to chat with him, other than the fact that I have a tight schedule. I receive way more invitations. I'm fortunate enough to receive way more invitations that my time permits me to accept. If I had enough time, I would want to do a lot more. So I often have to say no to people, not because I'm not interested in speaking to them, but simply because I run out of time. So there you have it. All right, moving on. Are there any questions so far that I've missed? All right, hold on. Bob the Terrible, I've answered. Jordan, I've answered. Where is everybody? Where are the people? Uh, I'm out of questions. We only have 91 people here. Usually we have several hundred. I think it might be in part because I do these on the spur of the moment, which is not really the smart way to do this. You should usually, prepare people to be there. Oh, I do one every Monday at 5 o'clock, but I'm just a very instinctual guy. I'm very impulsive. If I feel like doing one, I do one. But okay, I think we've got a new one. We've got Milos Potic. I hope I pronounced that. Book recommendation for someone who did not read many books in general. Oh boy, there are a million such books. It depends what your interests are. I could tell you what I'm currently reading. Excuse me one second. I'm currently reading. Oh, you like this? Look at The Godfather. You like that? I'm currently reading uh, this guy right here, Eric Kandel, In Search of Memory. Fantastic book. For those of you who don't know, Eric Kandel is a Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist. He trained as a physician, thinking that he would go into to become a psychoanalyst. This is in the old days, shortly after the Freudian days in the 50s and 60s, where many of the psychoanalysts were first trained as medical doctors and then would go into psychoanalysis. And then he eventually got interested in neurobiology and decided to study the biological bases of learning. How does the brain encode learning? When you learn something, what is actually happening at the proximate level with your neurons, with your synapses, with your dendrites? How is that being instantiated materialistically in the brain? And for that, he won the Nobel Prize. So this book is about his autobiography. I mean, both in terms of his personal autobiography, but also the biography or the autobiography of his scientific career. Very, very interesting. What I thought was amazing about the book, I'm about almost halfway through, not quite. What I love about the book is that you see the historical continuity in many of these stories of hardship. So in his case, there's a famous knock at the door as the Nazis are coming in. He's a Austrian Jew. He was born in Austria. He was 9 years old when they had to leave Austria, and then came to the United States. Of course, I was 11 when I had to leave Lebanon and come to Canada. And of course, for those of you who've read The Parasitic Mind right here in chapter 1, I talk about the infamous knock at the door, which I now call that story the pomegranate story. For those of you who read the book, one of the most chilling stories that one can imagine, and certainly one that marked me. That's why I included that story in the book. There was a lot of very difficult situations growing up in Lebanon, but this was certainly one of the most chilling ones. And so, in reading his story, he's still alive, by the way. He's 93, I think. You see how history repeats itself, even though we're from completely different time periods, different parts of the world, but there is a continuity to history, in this case tragic elements of history. So I would highly recommend that book. We're up to 121 people. That's great. I'd like to get to 300 people, but I'm not seeing super chats. A lot of people send me a million emails asking me all sorts of questions, and if I spent all day doing nothing but answering questions for free, I would do nothing but that. And of course, that's not quite fair. I put all of my content for free everywhere. I don't charge anybody. I haven't put it behind paywalls. So ultimately, one has to monetize their time. So please, if you would like to ask me questions, please do so via a super chat. Okay. Thank you, Milosh. Let's move on. We've got Jordan Schroeder is back. Thank you so much. FU for your information. I'm not sure what that means. F/U. Am I too old? Am I a dinosaur that I don't know what that means? Referring to males versus female dressing differently, there's always a norm, even if different in each culture. We always make them look different. Why? You mean why is it that we make the male dress different from the female dress? Well, I think it's some of the uh, some of the people in today's world might not think this is politically correct, but we are a sexually reproducing species consisting of two phenotypes that have different size gametes. There's a male phenotype and a female phenotype. And to the extent that we are a sexually reproducing species with sexual dimorphisms, then it would only make sense that the accoutrements that we wear, the sartorial uh, choices that we make, would be differentiated. Although, as you probably know, in some authoritarian regimes, you try to create genderless uniformity. There's kind of a collectivist mind hive mindset whereby everybody kind of dresses neutrally. You even see it in some cults where they try to remove some of these sex markers. But to the extent that all cultures have these sex specific markers, it obviously makes sense for a sexually reproducing species to do that. I mean, in the context of other sexually reproducing species, you actually see those differences not in the clothes that we wear, but for example, in the plumage. So think about birds. Birds are a wonderful class of animals to study sexual selection because you typically have huge sex-based differentiation in morphology, in coloring, in dancing, in the songs that they use to woo the other sex, and typically it's the males that are much more extravagant, although you have several cases of sexual reversals where it is the females who are bigger, who collect a harem of males. So for example, the Kaswari bird in Australia that looks exactly like a dinosaur, it is a sexual reversal species. It is the males that provide the greater minimal obligatory parental investment, and therefore every sex difference is reversed. The males are smaller, the males uh, sit on the eggs, the males are less aggressive, more sexually choosier. So you have an exact reversal. But for most species, it is the males that are more colorful. Thank you very much, Jordan, for your two fantastic questions. Chris Panagiotopoulos, Dr. Gad, I will forgive the wrongly spelled Gad. It's unless you meant Saad, in which case it's Saad. If you meant Gad, it's Gad, but I shall forgive you. How possible do you find the evolutionary biology approach of social tendencies and matters to prevail, considering always the parasitic ones now? Sorry, I don't get what you mean. Let me read it again. Dr. Gad, how possible do you find the evolutionary biological approach of social tendencies and matters to prevail, considering always the parasitic ones now? I'm afraid I don't quite understand the structure of the question. Uh, but if what you're saying is, how good are evolutionary psychological explanations of social phenomena? Well, they are very good. I mean, my whole career, my academic career has been trying to apply, or not trying, applying evolutionary psychology and evolutionary biological principles in studying all sorts of consumer phenomena, economic phenomena, mate choice, gift giving, hormonal effects of various phenomena, and how those are rooted in evolutionary theory. So you can't understand anything involving a biological agent of any type, let alone a human agent, without incorporating the evolutionary angle. That's the whole point of my entire career. So of course, I think that they are indispensable. You can't fully understand human behavior if you presume that humans are somehow outside the realm of biology. So thank you for that. I hope that I got to the gist of your question. Thank you, Chris, for your contribution. Let's move on. We're at 143 people. We need to get to double that. Oh, I have here not a super chat person. Good evening from Israel, Gad. Great. Rumor has it if you speak Hebrew, אני מדבר עברית, אבל לא טוב. I do speak Hebrew. If I immerse myself back in Israel or in a Hebrew context, it comes back very quickly. So I do consider that I speak Hebrew. But today, I would say my Hebrew is limited to I feel tired. I would like to have a sandwich. Do you want to go play soccer at the beach? So, in other words, I can't have a philosophical conversation, or I can't have an interview about the parasitic mind in Hebrew. Although I suspect that if I immerse myself long enough in a Hebrew context, it would come back to me quickly. Okay, let's continue with the super chatters or donors. Anthony Bentel, what is your opinion on God? Wow, that's a great question, a big one. That might have required a slightly larger super chat donation for such a question, but nonetheless, I appreciate your generosity. Marvin Guntz also just gave a donation without any questions. I truly appreciate that. Uh, so, what is my view on God? If what you mean is, uh, I mean, literally, what do I think of the characteristics that are attributed to God, or are you asking whether I believe that God exists or not? Uh, Most of you probably know that I'm not a very religious person, although I'm very much rooted in my religious heritage. I am very Jewish in that, being Jewish. I mean, nobody has lived their Judaism more than I have in Lebanon, right? So, so it's with me forevermore. So I think one can be certainly linked to their religious heritage because it includes many elements. There's a historical element, there's a cultural element, there is a communal element there, right? But specifically God, I'm not a strong believer in God. Although incident, I don't know if this is where you wanted to go with the question, but I do think that you can be very spiritual, and I don't mean in a cliche sense. I think you can have great reverence for things that are beyond you, that are greater than you, without necessarily rooting it in a narrative of God, in a supernatural God. As a matter of fact, I think it makes life that much more magical if you can have such awe and reverence to things, to experiences, to nature, without thinking that there is some guy in the sky who is controlling everything. So I am in that sense spiritual. So, for example, when I write a book and I open the laptop day one and there isn't a single syllable in that Word document, and then 12 months later, 14 months later, however time it might be later, I send it off to the publisher. And then a few months later, we go back and forth. Then it goes to press. And then a few months later, you guys are sending me photos of you reading it in Croatia and Romania and Israel and Dubai. And that is awe inspiring. That's beautiful. It connects us all. These ideas now spread from my brain to the laptop to your brain. So there are endless ways by which we can exhibit a love for the divine without the divine being godly, if I can put it that way. I look at my children and my love for them is immeasurable. And that love, you can call it godly, you can call it biological, because they are the vehicles of propagating my genes. So there are many ways by which I can be infinitely reverent to life and to the majesty of life without necessarily thinking that it is godly. I hope that I've answered your question, Anthony. Thank you so much for this rather deep question. Okay, moving on. We're at 157 people. Let's get it to at least, usually I get about at least 300. I don't know why only 300. It should be 3,000. Oh, FU means follow up. Thank you. I was worried that FU meant something else, but it didn't seem that Jordan was hostile. So thank you for clearing that up. Will you ever teach a 200, 300 level undergraduate class? I have to. I just finished teaching a course. Well, I think it's 400 level. Uh, I should mention this, by the way. I just thought, so I finished class last week, and it's beautiful at the end. Students are lovely, they appreciate. But this past semester might have been the most moving sending off I've ever had. It was just unbelievable how loving and appreciative the students were. And actually, my daughter had come to the last lecture, so she actually got to see that, and she was very moved uh, by the students' affection for me, for the class, for my efforts. So this is when it really you work hard all semester. Sometimes it's difficult times. You're working all night to prepare a class. You got problems with this student or that student, but then it all comes together and it's very, very rewarding. So there you go. Okay, let's keep going. I'm looking for those. We have Nika Melfly. Uh, thank you so much. Just a donation. Very, very appreciated. Let me go on here. We've got okay, we got some good people coming in. A few more. Okay, here we go. Good evening from Israel. God, rumor has it if you speak Hebrew, then you have a whole bunch of מדבר עברית בבקשה. Okay. Well, I think I already said, אני מדבר עברית, אבל לא טוב מאוד. I speak Hebrew, but not too well. But incidentally, 2 days ago, I think, I appeared on an Israeli show with an Israeli gentleman. I think the chat will be out in about 2 weeks. He had reached out to me several times before I finally was able to say yes. So to the people earlier who said about the gentleman role, rational male, whatever, maybe one day we will hold the chat. It's nothing personal. I don't think though that he will be translating it in Hebrew. I mean, we held the chat in English, but it was a very, very good chat. He really prepared well for our conversation. He asked some really good questions. So I hope that you'll enjoy it. So, toda rabba, haver, and there you go, which means basically, thank you very much, friend. Okay, we're moving on to Grinning Tiki 220. Thank you for your contribution. How much longer will this political chaos last, and do you see signs of it reversing currently? I think it will last for the foreseeable future. I wish I could say that I see it reversing, but I don't really see too many signs of uh, things improving. So, for example, the stuff that I discuss in the Parasitic Mind. Remember, the Parasitic Mind came out the hardcover in 2020, so it's now 2.5 years ago, and I couldn't stand before you today and say, "Oh, you know what? We've already reached the woke peak, and we're now on the downswing of woke. The craziness continues." Now, I'd like to think that maybe the old expression, a wounded animal is very dangerous at that point, right? Because he's kind of fighting on his last breath. So maybe this is kind of the final stand of the parasitic BS, and it'll improve. But I certainly don't see any institutional mechanisms that are suggesting that we're out of it. If anything, I'm seeing things only worsening. And this is why, by the way, so I haven't applied now for a few years for grants, scientific grants, nor have I applied for a chaired professorship, which, by the way, I held the chaired professorship, university-wide chair, which is the most prestigious professorship, for 10 years. And then when it came to time to renew it, and it should have been a no-brainer, like from an objective metrics perspective, it would have been a no-brainer. They refused me for a few years. Not surprisingly, I ended up losing a lot of money. I ended up losing one course off each year. So it was very, very costly for me. But then I decided over the past couple of years to not even try to apply anymore. Number one, because I think I stand zero chance of having it or winning it in today's environment. But number two, I wasn't willing to do the diversity, inclusion, and equity statements. I thought it would be quite hypocritical of me to be the guy who is fighting against parasitic ideas, but then when it comes to my career, to simply play along the game of parasitic nonsense. So that's actually one of the reasons, by the way, why it's important for you guys, if you support my work, to pre-order my book. Again, I'm not trying to sit here and grovel at you, but time is money, expertise has to be remunerated. If you support my work, again, I do all this for free. uh, Please head off today and pre-order the book. It really matters, because when the book comes out in July, all of the pre-orders turn into immediate sales that first week, which means that if there are enough people who pre-order the book, it could start off by being on the bestsellers list. If it is on the bestseller list, that gives it momentum. It's a domino effect, and then things keep moving. So if you really appreciate my work and my efforts, please consider donating here in Super Chat. Please consider sharing my work, commenting about my work, pre-ordering the book, and so on. Believe me, it's not easy to be me in academia, but I do it out of purity. All right, thank you so much, Grinning Tiki 220. All right, moving on. We've got Bartolome. Oh yes, I remember you, Esteban Murillo. Thank you so much for your contribution. Good afternoon, Dr. Saad. What's the evolutionary basis for autism? Here's a humble donation for you when inevitably you get shaken down. I'm about to tell you something, guys. You are 185 people here. I wish you were 18,500. We need to get these numbers to be much higher. But I appreciate each of you that you could be doing many other things. You chose to be here with us. So thank you for that. Last night, I had a dream of Justin Trudeau, where I was actually running after him and kind of screaming at him to give me back the money that he stole from me, the book royalties that he took for this book. So that gives you a sense. You don't have to be Jung or Freud and read the interpretation of dreams to understand that that's something that is, it remains. It's almost a year ago now. It remains something that every time I think about it, I almost go into a catatonic state, a rape victim state, that I could have participated passively in someone stealing all of my the rewards of my thoughts, my words. I won't get into it now, but thank you for that contribution. Uh, I think the best to answer your question about the evolutionary base of autism, I think the gentleman who has worked on that is Simon Baron Cohen, who is a neuropsychologist out of England and happens to be the cousin, if I'm not mistaken, of the comedian and actor Sacha Baron Cohen. And so, if you would like to look at some of the, you know, I do believe that he does try to link some evolutionary explanation to autism. I would recommend that you check out his work. If I'm not mistaken, more boys than girls are likely to suffer from autism, and there is some sex specific differentiation that causes that. I don't remember the exact argument, but I think it's Simon Baron Cohen who is the leading guy to answer that question for you. So if you do a quick search on Google, you'd be able to get that answer. So there you go. George Bingham, uh, thank you so much for your contribution. Hi, Dr. Saad. Looking back on your esteemed career, what is the most surprising, unexpected result from a study research that you've performed? Wow, what an amazing question. Uh, so, if you mean by surprising or unexpected, uh, that would obviously be something that was contrary to what I had hypothesized a priori. And so the first one that comes to mind, so I'll just answer with that one, is one whereby this is a paper published in 2009. It's Saad and Vangas, Vongas. Vangas was one of my graduate students, and we had worked on a project together looking at the effects of conspicuous consumption on testosterone. And we had done two studies, really truly cool studies. Some of uh, my some of my best scientific work. I mean, although I'm frankly proud of all of it, but because it was a study where we didn't. It wasn't, oh, imagine yourself engaging in this behavior. In study one, we brought in young men, and then we had rented a Porsche, and then we had also gotten a beaten up old car and gotten young men to drive both the Porsche and the beaten up old car in two environments, either in downtown Montreal on the weekend where everybody can see you, either driving the loser car or the high status car, and then on a semi deserted highway where you don't have the audience effect. Uh, Anyways, it's a big experimental setup. In study two, we looked at what happens to your testosterone level when another man is showing off. And one of the surprising things, I mean, there are several surprising effects in both of these studies that we weren't expecting, but I'll mention one. Uh, it turns out, for example, that young men, their testosterone level increased very highly, both in the when driving a Porsche, both in the downtown and on the semi-deserted highway. We of course thought that testosterone would go up more in downtown where there's a greater audience, right? To the extent that you're more likely to be engaging in sexual signaling when there's an audience of young women looking at you driving the Porsche, then that will create even a greater increase of my testosterone. And what we found is that, if I remember correctly, in both conditions, testosterone of men increased. And the reason for that is probably because the young men are coming from, they're probably, taking a bus usually to school or riding their bicycle. So the fact that you put them in you imbued them with such high social status so quickly, driving a Porsche, irrespective of the condition, that caused a huge spike in their testosterone. So that would be certainly one example of a very high profile study, had received tons of media attention and a lot of scientific attention, where a priori we weren't expecting that. Which, by the way, speaks to an important point to any of you aspiring scientists. Never scam or commit an ethical violation, right? We didn't go back and change our hypothesis to fit the data. Once you commit to a hypothesis, that's it, that's locked in. Now, this shows you that even though in some cases you get results that are not, congruent with what you had a priori hypothesized, there's still great value in the work as long as you hopefully have in this case, a post hoc explanation of why the results came out the way that they did. And in study two, which I won't get into now, there were also some surprising results. Thank you for that really great question. Really appreciate it, Mr. Bingham. Moving on, we got Anthony Bentil. Oh, just a nice donation with some kind of icon. I'm not exactly sure. I guess it's somebody wearing glasses. Thank you so much. We're almost at 200 people. Let's get it up. We're only 30 minutes in. Let's see if we can get it up to 300, 400 more. I have Asperger's, and it has ruined my life. Why has such a maladaptive brain deformity not been weeded out via the evolutionary process? So there are, well, I'm sorry that you've had that. Of course, Asperger's is high functioning autism. This is where you can excel in certain domains that don't typically require, for example, high emotional intelligence or high social acuity, where they could be, for example, pattern recognition. You could be in mathematics, you can be a computer programmer, where the fact that you have certain lacuna in your social interactions still allows you to function highly. And so maybe this is your case. There are several, I'll answer your question more generally than just, for autism, for Asperger's in this case. Although this similar principle can be applied to Asperger's, which also speaks to the earlier question about the evolutionary roots of autism. So in this book right here, The Evolutionary Basis of Consumption, and in this book, where is it? Right here, The Consuming Instinct, uh, I have sections where I talk about, oh, I have a big donation that I have to get to soon, two big donations. Number, why is it that we engage in dark side consumption, obsessive compulsive disorders, eating disorders, pornographic addictions, compulsive buying, pathological gambling? These are maladaptive, of course. And the argument that I give is I argue that these are maladaptive misfirings of an otherwise adaptive process. So, take, for example, OCD. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It makes perfect adaptive sense for me to wash my hands if I feel like I've had germ contamination on my hands. It makes perfect sense for me to check that the back door of my house is locked. What doesn't make sense if I am stuck in a loop for 8 hours doing it. So, it's a misfiring of an otherwise adaptive process. And many of these psychiatric conditions have exactly that same structure in explaining them. An adaptive process goes haywire and it becomes maladaptive. Thank you very much. Let me go to the two gentlemen. We've got Ravi Komatiredi. Oh, wait a minute. That's Dr. Ravi Komatiredi, which, by the way, I'd love to know. I don't want to give away anything that's personal. What's happened to the project that you had reached out to me about? I hope that I'm not going to be regretting soon the fact that you are a billionaire and somehow I wasn't on that gravy train. You're looking great, my friend, a paragon of truth and courage. I always learn something from listening to you. You are too kind, doctor. You're very, very sweet. What lovely words. By the way, we were talking a second ago about spirituality and divinity and awe inspiring. Here's the gentleman. I didn't know him at first. He reached out to me. We started communicating. He comes here, gives a very generous donation. I don't know if you can see it or not, and just says some lovely words. That's awe inspiring. That's what makes life magisterial. So thank you so much. I'm very touched by your kind words. Moving on to the next person. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, Ravi. There was another gentleman that was here, but I hope that he hasn't left upset that I didn't listen to him or didn't answer his question. I don't know where he is. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Something's going on. Just sending support. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, hold on a second. I don't know what's happening, but the whole screen went big on me. I don't know. Okay, let me see. I have Asperger's. Let me go down. Sorry, guys. Just sending support. Thank you. The prequel, respect. Thank you very much. Oh, just sending support. That was Jack Cross. Thank you so much for your contribution. I'm looking to see if I'm missing anybody. I really don't know what's happened. My whole screen looks wrong. Let me see if I can make. Oh, okay, I got it smaller. Jack Cross. We've got the prequel. Okay, thank you. There was another gentleman who had put a big donation, but apparently I missed him. Maybe he left upset. Forgive me if I'm not trying to ignore anybody. I'm just trying to scroll through these. I have Jason, Daniel Stone. Thank you for your donation. Much appreciated. Let me see if I missed anybody else. Mary Dyer. Kelly J. Keane is hoping to do a tour of Canada. Considering what happened in New Zealand, do you think she will be safe in Canada? I'm guessing Kelly J. Keane is Posey Parker. Is that who it is? If that's who it is, I'd like to think she'd be safe, but the lunacy. If you're talking about the woman, I think that's who you're talking about. The woman who got attacked in New Zealand, so on. By the way, I've been on her show. If I'm thinking it's the same person, uh, I think she'll be okay, but you never know. The woke are insane. Uh, Back Health 101. Why do women in the workplace gossip so much? Well, I think both men and women gossip, although the content of their gossip assorts along evolutionarily relevant content. You follow what I'm saying? There's actually some pretty interesting papers, which I discuss some of it in this book, The Evolutionary Basis of Consumption, that looks at the evolutionary roots of gossip. So check that out. Check that out. Steve Brake. Oh, thank you. You're here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you so much for your very generous donation. My goodness. If everybody were to give donations like some of the people here, which again, if you consider the fact that I do hundreds and hundreds of clips, chats, lectures, all for free. I truly appreciate your donations. My dream would be to be able to be sufficiently financially secure to be able to decide whether I wish to instantiate my what I call my escape velocity. There are so many things that I'd like to do, but of course, it's difficult to do when you're constrained by certain realities. Although I don't really adhere to those constraints, maybe that's the problem. Maybe they're coming for me next. Let me just check to see if I've missed anybody. Chowderhead. I had a thought yesterday that it actually requires a great deal of privilege and entitlement to be equipped with the required arrogance and ego to declare that you're offended. Am I cooking with gas? What? Sorry, let me read that again, Chowderhead. I want to be focused. You were kind enough to give a donation, so let me give it as you. I had a thought yesterday that it actually requires a great deal of privilege and entitlement to be equipped with the required arrogance and ego to declare that you're offended. Oh, I see. So you mean that, for someone to be offended because they were misgendered while sitting at their $80,000 a year tuition at Wellesley requires that you be privileged and entitled. If that's what you mean, bingo, you're exactly right. Yes, sir. You got it. Okay, did I cover everybody so far? Okay, Anthony, I did. Shrod Cab UK, I have Asperger's. Yes. Chowderhead, yes. Going down the list. Uh, Steve Brake, thank you so much again. And Ravi, thank you so much. Back Health, we got it. Mary Dyer, got it. Who else? Where are the people? Jason Daniel. Oh, Ravi, you're looking great. Thank you so much. So far, Ravi takes the biggest donation of this session. Thank you so much. You're too kind, Ravi. It's great to see you as well. I hope that the project that we had talked about is going well. That prequel, thank you so much for your contribution. Jack Cross, we're done. Okay. I'm not seeing any. Oh, okay. We got a new guy. Derna 1804. Is groupthink a fundamental human survival instinct? Yeah, well, yes. So, look, some of the most famous experiments in the behavioral sciences and in psychology are about conformity, right? So, to your point, right, to the extent that groupthink is ideological conformity, right? I want to take the same positions as everyone else within my tribe is taking, is a form of conformity, ideological conformity. So think about the Solomon Asch experiment. Many of you may or may not have heard of it. So this is the experiment where you show people three lines, okay, and then one other line here. One of the line on this side is clearly the same length as only one of the three lines here. So there's lines A, B, C, and then line X. Line X is clearly the same length as line B. So anybody who's not blind would be able to see that. Yet the point of the experiment is to see what happens if you ask, let's say, 8 people to tell you which of the lines A, B, C is the same as X. And the first 7 are fake subjects, they're Confederates, and they utter the wrong answer. Can you get the 8th person to completely go against his eyes? And again, these are very unambiguous stimuli, right? It's not as though it's fuzzy, it's gray, it's very clear, and yet you can get many people to go along. And so, yes, there is an evolutionary argument to be made for why we are a social animal. We don't wish to be ostracized from the group. But of course, there is an evolutionary argument to also, at the right time, stand out from the group, right? So in some cases, social proofing is good. In other cases, it's good to stand out from the group. So in the mating context, you don't want to be part of the herd. You want to be the one who stands out. So it's a complicated repertoire. At times, it makes evolutionary sense for us to fit in nicely within the group. And at other times, it makes perfect sense for us to stand out from the group. We have another donor. We have Rasmus Roivsved. I hope that I've answered that correctly. The number seems very high, so thank you for that donation, but it comes in a foreign currency, so it could be either incredibly generous or 14 cents, but irrespective, thank you so much for being here. Dear Dr. Saad, you clearly had great success in the wife department. I have. I always say, I mean, I'm first very thankful for the marriage that I have, and also very thankful for the amazing partner that I have. By the way, in my forthcoming book, which you all imagine if every single one of you were to go out and pre-order a copy at the end of today's chat, very, very helpful. Please do so. It goes up in the rankings ASAP. I have a whole chapter at the 2 most important decisions that will either impart great happiness or great misery upon you, and that is choosing the right spouse and choosing the right job or profession. And I go into why that is and what are some, you know, uh, rules of thumbs that you could use in making the appropriate decision. What kind of decision making processes can hopefully lead you to the right decision. I won't give it away, but yes, it is a very important decision. My question is, should I propose to my girlfriend now or save up for a lavish wedding first? Well, I would have to hear a lot more about your situation. So, right, there are so many parameters that can, how old are you? How old is she? How long have you been together? Is there tension in that you haven't proposed yet? Are there parental expectations? Are you finished with your education or not? So it's very, very hard for me to answer that, void of having tons more information. So I don't want to lead you down the wrong path. So I can't answer that. But what I can tell you is, uh, what so to the point of the lavish wedding, personal opinion, although people may disagree with this, I think that the money that is spent on a lavish wedding is really wasted money. I think if you take that money and use it for a down payment for a house, I think if you take that money and use it to start your life together, in all sorts of other important ways, that would be much better. If you're thinking about going to graduate school, you could use that money to go to graduate school. The lavish weddings are really a signal to the community. So, for example, in the community that I come from, of course, there are lavish bar mitzvahs, and I actually talk about that in this book, in the Evolutionary Basic Consumption. Even funerals can be done in a lavish way, where you are engaging in various forms of conspicuous consumption and costly signaling. So there is nothing, magical and divine about spending, $150,000 on a wedding. Imagine what else you could do with that money. The number of books you can buy for that amount of money, the number of trips you can take together. You could take 10 trips of $15,000 each You can go to Malta and then go to Sicily. Then you can maybe visit South Africa. And then you can go to Namibia. Then you can go visit Argentina, and you wouldn't have spent $40,000. So the lavish part, the way that I live life, I wouldn't waste it on that. But to each his own. But if she's a good one, treat her right, hang on to her, because there may never be a better one. So be careful. There you go. Best of luck, Rasmus. Let me go on. Let me see if I've missed anybody. Okay, we've got another one here. Chris. Oh, it's wonderful to see you back. Chris Panagiotopoulos. Dr. Saad, am I correct to think the academia on psychology has massive female in-group bias? Currently, the previous question that I failed was about evolutionary biology approach reaching mainstream, not only academia. Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I do all of my public engagement is precisely because I would like evolutionary psychology to become part of the toolbox of all people. We have what's called folk psychology, right? Folk psychology, just like you have folk biology or folk physics, is sort of the way the average person, when they walk around the world, what they think about these topics. What's your folk physics about how a projectile should move or behave? What's your folk psychology about why people do this? So it's the layperson's understanding of different phenomena in nature, whether it be human phenomena or physical phenomena. And of course, many people are not familiar with evolutionary explanations. Now, in some cases, they know these explanations innately because they are themselves Darwinian beings, so they have an intuition that is exactly correct. But many times they don't. So, for example, if I ask people, what do you think is the number one predictor of why there might be childhood abuse in a home? And I sit back and I listen to all of the predictors that my students will give. Well, none of these are remotely as close as predictive as whether there is, you ready? I've discussed this before. Some of you may know this explanation. If there is a step parent in the home, it's a 100 times greater factor in terms of its predictive power than the next factor in predicting whether there is child abuse in a home. And of course, there are very clear evolutionary reasons why a step parent may be differentially harmful to their stepchild than, say, a biological child. So there's great value in understanding uh, evolutionary principles. And when I first come to class, irrespective of which course I'm teaching, could be an undergraduate course, could be MBA, could be a MSc, meaning Masters of Science, or could be a PhD course, I always tell students the yes, I'm going to be teaching you about evolutionary psychology, but many times it's as related to consumer and economic decision making. But no, I'm actually going to teach you. I'm going to give you a universal explanatory key to teach you why our human nature is the way that it is. How you use it could be in many different ways. You can use it to explain why you were jealous at the party when your wife or husband was speaking too long to that woman. You can use it to understand why people fight for the corner office with the most windows. You could use it to explain why your menstrual cycle causes you to be more likely to gain weight in certain time periods than others. So there's an endless number of ways that you could apply. So the reason why I go on shows like Joe Rogan, other than he's a fun guy to talk to, is because by going on such a show, I can reach 10, 20 million people in one shot. And the reason why I do these chats, the reason why I started my channel, my podcast, is because I don't think that academics should be speaking only to other fancy schmancy academics. They should try to excite the public about the work that they do. So yes, I think there's a lot more work to be done, and hopefully I'm doing my part. Am I correct to think that academia has a female in-group bias? Well, there certainly is an increasing number of women in many, many disciplines. As I've explained in various places, if you look at male to female ratios at the associate level, associate means like half a bachelor's degree, master's degree, and doctorate across 5 racial groupings. So that's a 5 by 4 matrix. Okay, so there are 20 cells. In every single one of the cells, women outnumber men. And yet we still hear the bullshit about we need to be better allies to women. Yes, it is true. There was a time when women were systematically discriminated against in university settings. That's no longer true. So a decent, honest person revises their positions in light of new realities. But no. So not just in psychology, in countless disciplines, you have now a huge female lopsidedness, and just in terms of the numbers. Now, I don't care whether it's more men or more women or more purple people or short people or tall people. I just think that there shouldn't be uh, mechanisms whereby you systematically discriminate against one people. We used to discriminate against women in the past. We certainly discriminate against men today in all sorts of ways. Both of these realities were wrong. Pick the best people, irrespective of whether they ovulate or not. All right, let's move on. Who else we got? Okay. Did I miss anybody? We got Chris. We covered him. We got Rasmus. Maybe Rasmus has left us and has gone to propose to his lovely girlfriend. Who knows? Hi, Gad. You want FU money? Yes, I do want FU money, actually. And I'm not seeing your donation. It's not helping for the FU. I want FU money, not so that I can tell people FU, but I want FU money so that I can trace my trajectory in complete freedom. A few days ago, I think maybe yesterday, Prager, some of you may know it, put out a thing, what would money allow me to do? And then they ask you to fill it out. And I wrote, it would grant me the freedom to fully instantiate all of my creative impulses, right? Oftentimes, you want to be working on the next book, or you can't now because you're busy teaching, or you've got too much administration, or you've got to go through 50 PhD candidate files, or you have to do this, or you're right. So in a given day, I have 600 different things that I have to do. Many of those things I love. Some of them I love less. I would love to be able to have enough money to fully decide to do only the things that I wish to do. So it's not FU money so that I could show off or buy a fancier car or a bigger house. It's so that I can just, life is short. Every moment is truly precious. And if you could spend your time doing the things that matter most to you, I think you're well on your way to being happy. Something that I definitely discuss in my forthcoming book, The Sad Truth About Happiness. I hope that you will check it out. Okay, let's see if we got anybody else that I'm missing. Nobody else. Okay. Have you been to the UK? Greetings from Wales. Yeah, I have been to the UK. Thank you. We just got 2 donations, which I will answer in a second. I've been only once to England, and interestingly, earlier today at 11 o'clock in the morning, I spoke to someone on Zoom to appear to be a headliner at a very, very big event in London, England in September. We're still discussing the details. If I do end up going, I will certainly announce it, and hopefully I'll see you there. Last year, I very much regretted that I had been invited to be a participant in the Oxford Union debates, which is a very beautiful, prestigious forum. Uh, on the side of, has wokeness gone too far? And some of you may have seen that Konstantin Kisin and someone else, I think maybe James Lindsay, were there. Uh, I'm glad they were there, and I'm sure they did a great job. But I was supposed to be on the. I had been contacted very early, and I didn't end up going because it conflicted with my teaching schedule. You see, talking about having FU money, and also, frankly, they weren't. Never mind that they weren't offering any money for me to go there. They expected me to pay for my own way there. Now, I didn't have any research funds that would allow me to do that, so I wasn't going to spend money from my mortgage to go to Oxford. So hopefully, if I do end up going to this event next year, maybe I can also go to Oxford. So I'm hoping to come back to England soon. John Ulrich, thank you so much for your contribution. I'm the program chair for local university EE program. What is EE? Electrical engineering program. Okay, I have the opportunity to become a dean of the school, but I'm interviewing for industry work. Am I jumping out of education too rashly? Well, it's difficult to know, right? I'd have to know so much more about you, how long you've been in academia, what's your trajectory in academia, why would you consider leave? So I can't answer that. But more generally, I'm always, I mean, if I can put it that way, heartbroken when people decide to leave academia or not even enter academia because they're concerned about all the parasitic ideas and stuff. We're losing tremendous amount of brain power and potential talent and prospective talent because people realize that it's insane that you can't say a word that's out of place. I mean, not as you know, I'm a unbelievable anomaly in academia, and even some of the other people who supposedly are irreverent professors who speak their minds, they don't, if I may say, they don't nearly speak their mind as much as I probably tweet more on a Monday morning than most of the so-called irreverent professors do in their careers. So that is a bit soul crushing for most people because people get into academia because they want to do things that matter, but then they become cowardly, they become apathetic, they don't speak their mind. So I can't speak for you. I don't know if, look, if you love the life of an academic, it's tough to walk away from it, because I love being a professor. I love being able to just navigate all day long in ideas and intellectual play. One of the things I talk about in my forthcoming book is life as a playground. And I basically argue that science is the ultimate form of play, right? Think about a puzzle. When you're doing a puzzle, let's say 1,000-piece puzzle, that's no different than science. In science, you've got 1,000 different variables, and you're trying to see which one connects to which one doesn't predict anything, in which direction does the connection happen. So science is nothing more than the highest form of intellectual play. So I can't tell you whether you should leave or not, but it's just make that decision in a sober manner, because sometimes if you leave academia, it's hard to get back to an academic ecosystem. Thank you very much for your contribution, John. uh, Yofer Sheffield. Oh, Sheffield. Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield United, I believe, is playing Manchester City in the semifinal of the FA Cup soon. I don't know if this means anything to you. I only said that because your last name is Sheffield. Have you read Andrew Doyle's new book, The New Puritans? If so, thoughts? I was a little bit disappointed. It wasn't as funny as Parasitic Mind. Come on now. What could be as fantastic as the Parasitic Mind? Why must you make such a comparison? No, but in all seriousness, I haven't read the book, although Andrew Doyle has been on my show. I haven't. eh, I think that Andrew Doyle is the guy behind Titiana McGrath, right? I think that's who it is. So I do think that he's been on my show, if I'm not mistaken, but I haven't read that book, so I can't tell you, uh, how any thoughts about the book. But thank you for the kind words about Parasitic Mind. Glad that you enjoyed it. Okay, do we have anybody else? Did I miss anybody? Hold on a second. Okay, a load of Sheffield bread. I don't know what that means. Nice one. My last name is Corleone. Oh, okay. Do you have any ambitions of becoming a U.S. citizen? Uh, well, yes. Certainly moving to the U.S., I have ambitions to do that because I'm tired of uh, Canadian bullshit. Have you ever mistaken for Edward Saad, or I think you mean Edward Said? Is that who you mean, the Orientalist who studied what he calls Orientalism? I'm looking here. I know you gotta, to draw my attention. You gotta donate. Where are you guys? Where are all the supporters? I'm flipping. I'm looking. John, I've answered. Chris, I've answered. I don't think I've missed anybody. No, I haven't. Okay, well, we might be done earlier than I thought. Okay. Oh, we got a new person. Michael Marmorstein. Hi, Gad, with an exclamation point, but misspelt of Gad. It's impolite for me to point out that you misspelled it, but that's okay. Gad, Gad, last name Saad. The reason why I'm correcting you is because sometimes when people then go to search for, let's say, follow me on Twitter, if they misspell it, they won't get it. So it's Gad, Gad, last name Saad. So, hi, Michael. Love your perspectives. Thank you so much. How do you distinguish postmodern music from unusual music that is just an unacquired wow, what a good question. So, postmodern music, at least in the way that I understand the term postmodern music, postmodern art, and so on, is that really there are no rules, right? So uh, it's just you can do anything, because it's all subjective, just like postmodernism as a philosophical, as a quote epistemological movement says that there are no absolute truths. Postmodern art or postmodern music says that there are no, absolute aesthetic standards, right? Art is subjective, music is subjective. Uh, so your question is a great one, because what you're saying is, in some cases you think that something, forgive me to my Scottish followers, but I love the term. I have appropriated I now own that term. Sometimes you have postmodern music that is shite, and sometimes you have music that is not postmodern that is equally shite. How do we distinguish between the two? I think postmodern music follows no structure. I'm not a musicologist, but in other words, you could have anybody doing any random stuff, acting like a buffoon, as I've seen in some posts. I've actually posted maybe a year or two ago this incredibly ridiculous postmodernist gibberish where they're doing like breathing and screaming, and that becomes a form of postmodern music. That's just nonsense, right? That's just, full auditory profundity, right? Whereas, uh, you know, most opera to me is pure and utter shite. Okay. Most opera is just heavy metal music for people with a progressive lisp. You see how I'm now sophisticated, right? A lot of it is just screaming. But I can understand how it can have an acquired taste element, right? If you understand the context, you understand the history, maybe if you habituate to some of the nonsensical screaming, it can be good. So I think that's how I would differentiate it. The one that is postmodernist does not follow any rules, syntactical rules, aesthetic rules, uh, philosophical rules, semantic rules, whereas the other one does follow rules, right? Opera does have structure, but it might require some effort for you to acquire taste for it. So I hope I've answered your question. Moving on to the next person, we've got John Ulrich. Oh, hi there. In our college, anyone who deviates from this prescribed DIE ethos, I'm glad you used that acronym. I don't like when people use the other one, because DIE is very apt. DIE, diversity, inclusion, equity. DIE is a death spiral. It's a cancerous ideology. It's where meritocracy goes to die. So I'm glad you used that. In our college, anyone who deviates from the prescribed DIE ethos isn't part of the team. I would have to knuckle under if I became dean. I hear you, but guess what? Imagine if you are the one who has the courage to say, no, I'm going to be the guy who uh, is the agent of change. Historical people are those who do stand up. They're the ones who either do horrible things and are remembered for it, or do great things and are remembered for it, right? You look at many of the Nobel Prizes that have been won throughout history. Most of the orthodoxy at the time thought that that was quackery. So usually, if a whole bunch of people attack you, I'm saying now in the academic context, it's either because your work is truly garbage, or your work is really important, and the fact that they are reacting to you with such vitriol means that you are on the right track. So I've never been someone who has modulated myself 1 millimeter. I'm simply too authentic to a fault. I'm too pure to a fault. I just follow the truth where it takes me. So that's really for you, John, to decide whether you wish to go along to get along, live a uneventful, but may I say, uh, less impressive life, or to say, you know what? If I stand up, and I know that God's standing up, and I know that this guy will stand up, and this girl will stand up, together we can make a change. So I can't tell you, we each have to navigate through the calculus of the risks and rewards, in our own ways. But for me, at least, when I go to bed at night, as many of you may have heard me mention before, when I go to bed at night, I need to feel as though I never walked away from the defense of truth. I was never inauthentic. I never pretended not to see a violation over there, because then I would feel fraudulent. I would feel inauthentic, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I think that if you live by that ethos, then the decision will be made for you. Again, I don't want to make any decisions on your behalf, but I'm giving you my advice if I were in your brain. But of course, I'm not. Thank you, John, for that contribution. Moving on here, we've got Matthew Phillips. Thank you for uh, your contribution. I am sad I dropped out of my bachelor's in education, in adult education, but the professor kept teaching me how to be a better white man to minorities, like our prime feminister. Okay, so I'm guessing that you are Canadian. I still got a job teaching ESL, English as a second language, but don't want to pay to learn racism. See, this is the kind of stuff that breaks my heart. Here is Matthew Phillips, a guy who's trying to get an education, trying to do the right thing, try to do something, and then he gets so he drowns in parasitic ideas. All of these ideas covered in this book, he drowns in this stuff. He says, "No, I'm not willing to play along." And then, look, I can understand. He says, I'm not paying for this garbage. I don't want to be, excuse me, a willing passive participant in you trying to spread all this cancerous garbage in my brain, and I have to pay for it. And so he leaves. Now he leaves, and then this next person leaves, and this next person leaves, and suddenly the 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 brain drain, but in this case, the brain drain is not all the brain drain is leaving from Canada to the US. The brain drain in this case is people who otherwise could have contributed in academia are leaving in droves. That's disgusting. That's shameful. Imagine if there was a mechanism where all great soccer players or potentially great soccer players are leaving and not becoming soccer players for reasons XYZ. Then whatever you'd be watching on soccer wouldn't be the best players possible. So I'm sorry that you went through this, Mr. Phillips. But again, just like for the previous gentleman, John Ulrich, maybe you can be a contributor to change. I can understand the desire to walk away, but if we all walk away, then the whole system crumbles. That's why I stay. And that's why, though, I always ask for your support. Please support me. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like me to address here, we still have a few more minutes. Please consider supporting me. Okay, we're going to Travis Bristow. Through your excellent skill in intellect and debate, have you ever successfully changed the mind of a third or fourth wave feminist? What a great question. Many people. You asked me the question, so I'm not trying to brag, but I have changed many people. As a matter of fact, I just this morning, I haven't replied to her yet, but I received just a lovely email from a student who just finished the course with me, who said, I first came into the class and I would hear some of your theories and I would be angry. Like, right? She was triggered for whatever reason, because I was talking about evolutionary psychology, sex differences, who knows what was upsetting her. But then I had an aha moment. I completely changed. Now I realize, she said some amazing things. I talk about your stuff at dinner parties. So, I mean, that's why I do what I do, right? If I thought that there was no way to penetrate, people's cognitive and emotional obstacles, then there'd be no point doing any of what I'm doing. So, yes, I've changed many minds. I've changed people's minds when it comes to, how much they loved Justin Trudeau, and then they say to me, "Oh my God, I wish I had listened to you." You know, that's why I do what I do, right? Which is to create new knowledge, spread good ideas. Actually, the festival that I'm going to in London, hopefully in September, is all about the spread of good ideas. So Travis, yes, I have changed many a mind. Thank you so much for your question. Okay, moving on to Rasmus. Oh, you're back. Great. Did you send in? Did you go down on your knees? Not yet. You're still here. All right, doctor. I will go ask her. She will say yes, no doubt. Keeping my fingers crossed. Let me know. If she says yes, send me an email. Let me know. I'm sure she will. Are rituals like weddings just relics of the past, or do they have a proper function? They do have a proper function, right? It's a way to announce to the community that these two people are now off the mating market. It's a way to for the two families to get together. There are all sorts of functional value that comes from having the ritual. All I was saying to your earlier point is you can meet all of those functional values without spending $80,000 or $120,000, unless your precise goal is to engage in very extravagant, showy, conspicuous consumption to show that you are top dog. But most people end up going into great debt so that they can show that they're lavish and important. So So yes, there is value in publicly celebrating your union, but you can achieve those things without having it being ostentatious and lavish. Thank you so much, Rasmus. Best of luck. Send me an email. Let me know. You just have to say, "This is Rasmus. She said yes," and I'll be happy for you. Okay, moving on. Uh, Travis, I've already answered. I'm going now to Andrew. Thank you so much for your contribution. Are you familiar with the theory of the quote, the slow cancellation of the future, close quote? No, I'm not. It seems to be depressingly true, with the only exception being the acceleration of woke ideologies in all forms of cultures. So, are you familiar with the theory of the slow cancellation of the future? I'm not familiar with it, but what I'm gathering from this is that what you're arguing is that the woke parasitic ideas are not slowing down; they're accelerating. Uh, as I said earlier, when someone said, "Do you see this ending?" and I said that unfortunately I don't yet. I think I'll have to thus far agree with you that yes, woke ideas continue to proliferate, but if we take a slightly longer term view, I think that all of the parasitic stuff will lose at the end. It will be eradicated. There will be an autocorrective mechanism whereby the better ideas will win. The question, though, is that you have to kind of fasten your seatbelt and be patient and fight over the long haul, right? So, in the same way that it took, depending on the idea pathogen that I discuss in the parasitic mind, postmodernism, cultural relativism, militant feminism, social constructivism, each of these idea pathogens, depending on which one we're talking about, could have started about 80, 90 years ago up to 40 years ago. But it's taken many, many decades for these ideas to become normalized in HR departments, in Hollywood, in politics, in journalism, right? It wasn't overnight that those ideas. What you had to do is you had to inculcate many generations of students with all this bullshit, so that when they went out and became our leaders and our politicians and our CEOs, they were completely parasitized by this bullshit. And I'd like to think that the inoculation against these ideas won't necessarily take 40 or 50 years, but the battle won't be won, by next Tuesday, unless there is truly a unified, concerted effort by the silent majority to speak together all in one voice. And then I think we can truly accelerate the speed at which we defeat the bad ideas. The problem is that most people don't wish to speak out. And so it'll be a long, drawn out, war of ideas. Thank you very much for your question, Andrew, and for your contribution. Moving on to Corey Cassell. Thank you so much for your contribution. Hi, God. I respect the clarity of your thought. Thank you. You're very kind. Wondering if you've seen Megyn Kelly describing her son's school, where kids are asked to show count of 5 fingers, how heteronormative they feel today. Seems insidious, in my humble opinion. Well, I haven't heard about that specific example, but I do receive from countless fans from around the world, typically from North America, uh, all kinds of horror stories of some of the woke nonsense that's happening at the children's school. I haven't heard about that particular one, but I can certainly tell you that I love Megyn Kelly. I love her precisely because uh, she's an exemplar of the type of mindset that we need to win the battle of ideas. Right? She's both incredibly beautiful and feminine, and she said that she used to be a tomboy and then she grew up to be quite feminine. She was too modest to say that she's beautiful, but she is. But yet she's got many masculine traits. This is in her words, where she fights hard. She can be unforgiving. Not that it's only a masculine trait to have that, but typically it's associated with sort of this aggression, not physical, but even ideological aggression is associated with more masculinity. And she's irreverent. She suffer fools gladly, and I think that's why her and I get along so famously well. I've been on her show twice. She's been on my show once. Uh, the people who are here today might be the first, although I think I put out a tweet to announce who my endorsers for my forthcoming book are. She's one of them. She wrote a fantastic endorsement, fantastic blurb for my forthcoming book. So for all sorts of reasons, I'm a big fan of hers. She's funny, she's intelligent, she's well prepared, she's lovely, she's beautiful. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me in the least bit that regrettably her son has to, how heteronormative. So if 5 is the maximal or 10, so this is how heteronormative I'm feeling today. Although some of you may have seen that I recently announced I came out on my show. I came out as a gay man. I don't know if you saw it, because it turns out that my biological female wife, right? She's female, biologically, uh, came out to me and said that she self-identifies as a man. And we all know here in this room that all you need to do is self-identify as sex and you become that sex. So she self-identifies as a man, therefore I'm a gay man, because that's it. She is a man, right? The fact that she doesn't have a penis doesn't make her not a man. Just like if you have a 9-inch penis, you could still be a gorgeous woman. So imagine now how high I score on victimology poker when not only am I a childhood war refugee, not only do I have this gorgeous, glorious olive skin, I'm a brown man from the Middle East, war refugee, childhood war refugee, Arabic Jew, but I'm now a gay man. I win. You can't dislodge me from the hierarchy of victimology. Okay, we've got, who else we got? We got Theophrastus 3.0 with a beautiful icon of, I'm guessing, I don't know if that's, if there is such a philosopher, I'm afraid I don't know who that is. Theophrastus, sure, I know who that is. I appreciate your ability to cut, well, first of all, thank you for the contribution. I appreciate your ability to cut through the meaningless sophistry that seems to dominate our politics and culture these days. If woke re-education camps become a thing, I I hope we're in the same gulag. Yes, yes, you seem like a lovely person. I'm so glad that you said this, because I despise faux profundity. I despise what you're calling here meaningless sophistry. That's why I sometimes can appear, although I always do it in the best of, light, best of spirit. Even when I attack someone, I do it, I think, politely, playfully. There's always kind of a twinkle in my eye. But I despise some of the public intellectuals who are super smart. You see how I'm doing with my progressive lisp? You see that? You see, you have to tighten this. My brother used to say, tighten it, right? So a lot of the meaningless sophistry that you get, the faux profundity, precisely comes from scammers, falsely profound people who have to engage in this, as you say, meaningless sophistry, because that allows them to appear profound. People who have really good ideas don't have to engage in that. That doesn't mean that I don't have a very large vocabulary. That doesn't mean that I can't be very professorial. I mean, I just came back from Stanford and USC. It doesn't get more prestigious. But it means that if my ideas are good, they should be consumable by the greatest number of people possible. That's why I love when I receive letters from, Green Beret and Navy SEALs and corrections officers and truckers, right? Imagine I get an email from a trucker who says, I do a long haul from Kansas City to whatever, to Wyoming, and I sit there and I listen to your stuff and I love it, Professor Sad. That makes me so happy, because if I'm able to reach that gentleman, that means I'm exactly speaking in the right language. I'm making the material palpable, exciting to a large swath of people. So thank you for realizing that and noticing that and stating it, because that's exactly, I think, what a good communicator should be able to do. If I could only speak to a few other enlightened, haughty professors, then that's bullshit. It's useless. But for most academic, the reason why they only speak to fellow academics is because they can't pull it off. They can't go on Joe Rogan and be interesting for 3 hours. They can't just have an open conversation like here. Think about all the number of topics that I've already addressed in the last hour and 15 minutes here. Because people who know me know that I'm down to earth. I mean, I get approached, tons of times by people on the street, and I'm always so thrilled, because it's enthralling to know that, people are consuming your stuff. I mean, not from an ego perspective, not from a narcissistic perspective, but ultimately, a musician wants to have their music played by as many people, or listened to it by as many people as possible, and an intellectual should have their ideas consumed by as many people as possible. So when you get a 70-year-old woman cross the street to meet you, and a 16-year-old boy come up and say, "Oh, I saw some of your funny skits that you do when you're mocking people," and that's amazing, right? So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Okay, we got Saman Khazani. Wow, thank you so much for your very generous. Tied for second highest donation today. The highest one still remains Dr. Ravi. Uh, One could say the inherent purpose of life isn't necessarily to sit atop all hierarchies. That being said, how in your own life have you dealt with the brutal reality of the idealized versions of yourself you realize would never come to fruition? Well, so I mean, there are several concepts here, some of which I'm not seeing the link to them, but I'll answer in the best way that I understand from your question, and then you'll tell me if I'm on the right track. Uh, so the brutal reality of the idealized version of yourself you realize would never come to fruition. So in the forthcoming book, when I'm talking about regret, so in one of the ending chapters, I talk about, if you've lived a good life, if you've minimized the amount of retroactive regret that you experience, right? If you are drowning under, oh my God, I regret I did this, I regret that I didn't do this, and there's nothing you could do to change that, then you probably didn't live your full life. For me, the main looming one has been, I've always been interested in only two things in terms of careers. I've always wanted to be a professional soccer player, and I've always wanted to be a professor. And I always thought that I would be both. I would first, play until the end of my career, and then the rest of my life would be a cerebral life. And as it turns out, both because I had a very, very serious career-ending injury and Canadian Championships, 1982, but also for other reasons, I wasn't able to meet that fate. And so every time the World Cup comes around, every time there's, I go play with people, and I'm reminded of the talent that I once had, although I'm not nearly as good as I used to be when I was 17. I'm slower, older, less limber. I can't accelerate as much. I can't run as fast. But, it always makes me really hurt because, we do come on this earth with certain unique skills. And if you can find what those unique things that you're good at and truly meet your talent where you need to meet it, then I think, in my case, luckily, because I had this second love, which is books, which is intellect, which is being an academic. Now that I did pursue it fully, I like to say, I did win the World Cup of life, other than living in Montreal. I'd rather be in Southern California or maybe Florida. Uh, it allows me to be somewhat protected from a sense of regret because, my life thus far, and I hope there are many, many, many more infinite years left. I have lived a meaningful life. And so, uh, some things you can alter. So, for example, I tell people when they are, regretful that they didn't go to school, I always tell them the story, and I won't give it away, but you should really read my forthcoming book. Please go out and pre-order it, The Sad Truth About Happiness. I tell some stories of people who went to school when they were into their 70s and 80s and 90s. I had a guy on my show about 6 months ago, Manfred Steiner, who was an MD, a medical doctor, became a hematologist, then got a PhD in biochemistry in 1967, I think, and just finished this past fall a PhD in physics at the age of 89. Age of 89, finished a second PhD, having had a whole career as a physician, because his first love had always been physics. He'd always wanted to be a physicist. So, there are some things that we can make changes to, others we can't. I can't go back and be a professional soccer player, but I can, encourage my children to play soccer. So there are ways by which I can soften the regret. Thank you very much, Salman, for that fantastic question. Moving on to the next person, Jeff Horton, another person who ties the record for the second largest donation of the day. Marine salute. Oh my goodness. Uh, and I see the image. I guess that's the famous image of the Marines taking over. I don't remember the name of the iconic picture. Uh, you can't imagine how much I think had I never been a soccer player and then an academic, I think probably I would have done very well as a soldier. Not so much because I like to to adhere to authority. Maybe I wouldn't have been very good at, adhering to authority. I am a kind of free thinker, but the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the sense of honor that comes with being in the military is something that really appeals to me. And I think that's why a lot of military people seem to be also drawn to my work. By the way, next Monday I have Brigadier General Anthony Tata on the show. Brigadier General. How cool is that? How cool is that title? Brigadier General. I need to have that title. From now on, I am Brigadier General Gadsad. Marine salute. Thanks for sounding off like you have a pair. Your courage is equally as inspiring as your wit and sarcasm. No question. Just thank you. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service because apparently you are a Marine. I love you guys. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw last year I received a package of all military stuff. Like, here's a stuff from Green Beret, here from a Marine, an officer who was very touched by a letter that I had read from my son about, thanking, I think it was on Remembrance Day. My son is very young. He was thanking, the soldiers for their efforts, for their sacrifice. And so I can't tell you how much I love you guys. Thank you very much, sir. Cheers. Moving on. Thank you, Jeff. Calm on ground. I just invested in my own future happiness this summer by pre-ordering. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much. I'm gonna let me first finish reading what you wrote, and then I'll say something. Thank you so much for being such a good humored honey badger role model. Thank you. Uh, you know, that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because what would happen often is people would write to me and say, you always seem to be joking around, happy, smiling. Even when you're going after people, you seem to be playful. That's what really, by the way, pisses me off. When people sometimes think, oh, you seem so rough on social media and so on. Even when I'm rough, even when I call someone castrato, I mean, that's poetic. I'm joking. I'm having fun. Like, it's never, even with, I don't even want to bring up his name, but the Malibu meditator. I hate the fact that there seems to be now bad blood between us, because I'm not that guy. I don't want to have bad blood with people. I want, I really am kind of a purist. I just want, to spread positivity, spread good things, spread happiness. So to go back to your point, the reason why I wrote the book, well, I discuss it in the opening chapter. First, people would write to me and say, well, what's your secret? How come you're happy? Now, here's the thing: 50% of our happiness is inscribed in our genes, roughly 50%. So now you might say, oh, that sucks. That means I can't do anything about it. But no, half glass, half full, half empty, literally. That means that there's 50% of the variance in happiness across people that is up for grabs, whereby there are decisions that you can make that can move you towards Mount Happiness or away from it. There are mindsets that you can adopt that can move you to Mount Happiness or away from it. And so people kept saying, tell us your secret. Why are you, as you said, thank you so much for the kind words. You're good humored, you're fun, you're jovial, you're down to, you're playful. What's your secret? Number one. Second reason why I wanted to write this book is that oftentimes whenever I would post something on social media that was prescriptive, like I'm giving some advice or life lesson. I was never someone who had thought about writing such books. People would be truly touched by it, right? And to me, sometimes I would offer advice that I thought was self-evident, but yet, people would really it would resonate with them. They'd say, "Oh my God, you don't know how much." Like, even let's say, when I now lost a lot of weight. I mean, I was already in the process of writing the book. I mean, when I first started losing weight, I hadn't started. Anyways, so like when I went on Joe Rogan last time and I talked about, you know, uh, the steps by which I lost a lot of weight, that's probably the thing that got. I think I've been on Joe Rogan 8 times. So that's 8 times times 3 hours. That's 24 hours of content. And my journey of weight loss is probably the thing that was most covered around the world. Why? Because people need help. People want to say, hey, give me the recipe for how you succeeded in task A, B, and C. So I saw the power of that in various interventions I would do online. And so I thought, you know what, why don't I, I've led so far an exciting and, eventful life with a lot of, good lessons to be learned. I think I've got interesting things to say. Let's see if I could put together a book that talks about well-being, happiness, but in the unique GAD style. So it's a lot of really, if I may say, really cool personal anecdotes that are interwoven with ancient wisdoms. Here comes Epictetus, here comes Seneca the Elder, here comes Aristotle, right? Uh, here come the Stoics, or whatever. And then coupled with also contemporary science, neuroscience, positive psychology, behavioral science, science of well-being, psychiatry. And so it's a real mishmash of personal anecdotes, ancient wisdoms, contemporary science put together that hopefully you enjoy. So thank you so much for pre-ordering the book. I hope a few others have. Again, you can't imagine how much it helps from the perspective of really getting off to a good start off the gates. So thank you for that. Are there anybody else that I've missed? I hope not. I don't think so. Oh, yes, we do. I do have a whole bunch. Hold on a sec. I just envisioned. Okay. Mother June. Tabule, yay or nay? Of hello, Gadsad, Lebanese. Tabule is Lebanese. Absolutely yay. But here's the trick. You ready? The ratio of parsley to burghul. Burghul are the small, I don't know how you say it in English, bulgur wheat. Uh, I don't like when it's a lot of parsley. It has to be more meaty. So the really good, homemade parsley, which not parsley, tabbouleh, which my wife just made, by the way, because we had some guests over, neighbors, for a barbecue, Lebanese barbecue this past weekend. It has to have a lot of bulgur wheat. So absolutely, yeah. I mean, I eat it like I inject it in my veins, basically. So yes, very good. We've got Theophrastus 3.0 is back. Okay, thank you so much. Retired military here. Oh, cool. You would have made an excellent intelligence analyst or electronic warfare specialist. That's where free spirits and geeks belong. Oh, well, thank you so much. I don't want to give away anything because I want you to read it in the book. Let's just say there is a story in there that's incredibly powerful that does involve me having had some experience within that range, within that world. I'll leave it at that. It's a very, very powerful story. And it's a story, by the way, that until I told my wife when we were starting to date, no one had known of. In other words, this is something that happened when I was in my teens. I know it's making you uh, you're excited. I hope it's making you excited to learn about it. It's something that happened to me in my late teens, and for many many years no one knew about it, and it very much speaks to your intuition of how I would have been in military intelligence. I'll leave it at that. uh, all right. Oh, someone wrote Malibu meditator with many uh, smiley faces. Yes. CJB, thank you for your contribution. Good evening, Gad, with exclamation point. How are you, sir or ma'am? Or any or two spirit or non-gender or non-binary or whatever. Have you encountered any politically motivated problems from editors or publishers in relation to your outspoken nature? Holy moly, have I ever? Hello, Gad Saad here, king of the honey badgers, the irreverent one. Absolutely. Many, many times. Actually, just recently, I wrote to the editor of Nature Human Behavior. I think there's a, like, as part of the Nature journals, there's one that's, I think it's called Nature Human Behavior, where they were incorporating diversity, inclusion, and equity within their editorial stuff, which is completely anti-scientific. So I wrote to her and said, "Hey, why don't you invite me to write a counter position?" And that didn't go too well. I didn't even hear from her. So throughout my career, listen, I've been for almost 30 years now, I've been trying to incorporate. So never mind about all the woke stuff, but I've been trying to incorporate evolutionary psychology within the behavioral sciences in general and the business school in particular. And let me tell you, till today, many social scientists abhor the idea that humans are shaped by biology, which of course is an insane idea. And that's originally how I realized that people can be so parasitized, even intelligent people, professors could be parasitized by complete bullshit. So that was the start of where I thought, oh, Houston, we have a problem. And so the excuse me, the vision of writing the parasitic mind is one that started early in my career as I saw how people could be parasitized. So yes, of course, to your question, I've had many politically motivated hit jobs on me in academia, many. uh but dad sad, thank you for your contribution. do news do nice guys stop for most starting last? What? Jew, D-U-E, Jew news, nice guys stop for most starting last? Sorry, buddy, I'm afraid I don't know if you're drunk or what's happening, but that sentence makes no sense. Jew news, nice guys stop for most starting last. Can't help you there. uh what else we've got? I can really recommend The Parasitic Mind. I would never take any person seriously who had only ever read one book. Okay, I'm not. Okay, I'm trying to see if I missed anybody. Tabule, we got Common Ground. Okay, guys, we're running out of time. If you want to this keep going on, we got about 180 people here. I was hoping that we'd get more like closer to 300, but again, I did this last minute. Uh, Muhammad Mansour Jad. Hello, Professor Saad. Hello, Muhammad. I'm just reading now random comments. Okay. I'm not seeing anything. Hit the like button. Who said that? Oh, I'll work. Okay. Oh, these are people talking to each other on the thread. Guys, unless I don't receive any more questions, we might call it a day. By the way, for those of you, who would like to go back and so this is, live streamed, and then later it will be posted, fully on my YouTube channel, permanently, and then I will also upload it on my podcast. So if you want to go back and review anything that was said, you can. It'll be in the permanent record. Okay, Gad. Leonette, Gad, I'm a big fan. Can you tell me more about your experience adjusting to the US culture? I can tell you a lot more, but I gotta see a super chat donation. That's the way it works. Those are the rules of the game. By the way, it's been now years that locals and Rumble have asked me to join them, and were even willing to offer me a contract to join them. I haven't done it because I've always kind of resisted the idea of putting my content behind paywall. But I think, again, I've said this before, I might have to move to some of that because it's very difficult to be one way in generosity. I give of all my time for years and years, for decades, and people consume it. I know millions of people consume it, but then I don't get the reciprocal love. So please consider doing so. CJB, sorry, I meant problems directly related to writing your book. Has it been difficult finding an editor or publisher? Okay, you came back for that question. Um, you know, I mean, yes, imagine trying to get the parasitic mind, where you're talking about parasitic ideas, parasitized people in the publishing industry, which is made up of tons of parasitized super woke people. But that's the beauty, by the way, of why I decided to go with Regnery, and it's my experience with them has been amazing. Regnery were the publishers both of Parasitic Mind and of my forthcoming book, The Sad Truth About Happiness. Pre-order it today. Don't forget, I'm counting on you, uh, because I avoided a lot of these problems, because Regnery is fully committed to freedom of speech, freedom of inquiry, I was very worried at first. What if I post a tweet that they won't like, and they're like, "Are you kidding me? We love all this stuff. Do more of it." So you really want to find a publisher that is fully has a similar vision to you when it comes to these deontological beliefs that people should not be canceled because of a tweet that they put out or so on. And frankly, I think that I could have gotten better monetary deals, for example, in terms of book advances I get now, because I've been a successful author. uh I get all sorts of people that approach me saying, "Hey, I want, why don't you come with us? Why don't I represent you?" Big fancy agents. And I've been totally loyal to Regnery because there's value in having that kind of protection. So I've been lucky in that I've made the right decisions, at least in my book writing career, to try to find publishers that would not be woke. So that's really the trick. So thank you for your question, for your return question. Okay, let me move on. Nick K, thank you so much for your contribution. Hi, sir. What do you think about the social psychology discipline? Well, it's great. By the way, you may or may not know this. I mean, some of you may know this. First semester as a doctoral student at Cornell, 1990, fall 1990. Maybe some of you weren't even born there. I can't believe that I'm that old. Uh, I had taken a social psychology course, advanced social psychology, with Professor Dennis Regan, and it was in his course that he had assigned the book Homicide by two of the pioneers of evolutionary psychology, Margot Wilson and Martin Daly, husband and wife team. And the book is about studying patterns of criminality from an evolutionary perspective. And so I owe great thanks to an advanced social psychology course for having introduced me to evolutionary psychology. So, of course, social psychology is a wonderful discipline. So, for those of you who are interested in reading academic literature from that discipline, probably the number one uh, academic journal is the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, JPSP, but there are others. Yeah, so I think it's fantastic stuff. Now, to the extent that you can maintain the parasitic woke stuff out of the field, then I think it's a beautiful, elegant, rigorous scientific discipline. Once you get some of the bullshit that seeps in, then of course it becomes less scientific. But generally, yeah, I love social psychology. I love all fields of psychology. Social psychology is great. In my PhD, one of my specializations, one of my minors was cognitive studies. So the study of the brain, which included cognitive psychology and linguistics and philosophy and computer science. So of course, evolutionary psychology, consumer psychology. Uh, Interestingly, though, as if you hopefully buy my forthcoming book, early in the book, I talk about the fact that early in my career, I had even considered going into clinical psychology, and I decided against it for two reasons. Number one, I thought that a lot of the therapeutic approaches were based on pure bullshit and quackery, and they weren't scientific enough for my taste. But secondly, and this is where the old Delphic maxim, also discussed in my forthcoming book, "Know thyself," is really important, is I knew that while I had the empathy and the sensitivity to be hopefully a good therapist, I thought that I was too sensitive and sentimental to last as a therapist, meaning that if I'm going to hear about how some child was, sexually abused by their, piggish uncle, that it would be hard for me to compartmentalize and not be personally damaged by hearing all of this cruelty all the time. And so I thought, you know what, I can't really be doing, even though I had the instinct to want to help, I thought that I would ultimately, put a bullet in my head because I wouldn't be able to handle, you know, such a life of always having to deal with people's problems. But in a sense, as you will read in the book, I became a de facto global therapist, given the fact that so many people write to me for advice and help and so on. So thank you for that. So yes, I think social psychology is a great field. Brent Taylor, thank you for your contribution. What is your opinion of the postmodern right wing? I'm not sure what you mean by postmodern right wing. Usually postmodernism is linked to the left wing. Postmodernism, briefly stated, as I explained, the parasitic mind is the epistemological position that there are no absolute truths. We can never speak of truth with a capital T. We are always constrained by subjectivity, by personal biases, by cultural relativism, and so on. So to speak of a human universal is silly, according to postmodernism. So that's the postmodernism that I speak of. So I don't know what you mean by right wing postmodernism. Sorry, I don't know how to answer that. Michael Marmorstein is back. Thank you so much for your contribution. Hi. Oh, sorry to misspell your name on the last one. No problem. Wondering what you think of social Darwinism as an evolutionary biologist. Well, I'm an evolutionary psychologist, although I apply evolutionary biology. I'm probably more of an evolutionary biologist, technically speaking, than most evolutionary biologists, but formally, that's why I'm an evolutionary behavioral scientist, in that I apply evolutionary biology in studying behavioral sciences. But fair enough. Uh, Social Darwinism is actually a truly regrettable appellation, because many people who end up hating evolutionary theory hate it because of social Darwinism. Social Darwinism was a movement that came out of British class elitists who said, "Hey, this is more than around the time, just shortly after Darwin. Hey, look, there's a natural struggle between social classes. We are the upper class, you are the lowly class, you lost out. Hey, if you die from tuberculosis in your sucky neighborhoods, if you don't have enough money to get an education, that's just the natural struggle between classes. It's a form of Darwinism, it's social Darwinism, so who cares?" Right? The Nazis did a similar thing, except that instead of using social class as the struggle, they used struggle between the races. Hey, it's Darwinian. We are Aryan. You are the Jews. Sorry, it's Darwin. We have to kill you. That's just nature. Eugenicists did the same thing. Hey, it's Darwinian. We have to castrate homosexuals because that way they don't, quote, spread the gay gene. Now, each of these assholes misused evolutionary theory to their political goals, right? But it has nothing to do with evolutionary theory. That's one of the reasons why many imbeciles, frankly, including academics, dislike evolutionary theory, because they think, oh, evolutionary theory is eugenics, evolutionary theory is Nazism, evolutionary theory is social Darwinism. Got nothing to do with it. That's just a bunch of cretins and miscreants misusing evolutionary psychology, evolutionary theory, evolutionary biology to suit their political agenda. So, got nothing to do with anything. Thank you, Michael. Common Ground is back. For people watching, be sure and ask your local library to order the book. Yes, please, or put an order. Hey, we want the sad truth about happiness, 8 secrets for leading the good life. I want it in every library. But again, most importantly, we leave this chat. I want to go on Amazon and I want to see it having shot up. Even if 20, 30, 40 of you, believe me, I don't make a lot of money if 40 of you buy the book. I'll make $3 a book. So I will have made less money from you ordering the books than I will from your generous donations here. But what matters is that if you have enough people who pre-order the book, boy, does that increase the chances of it hitting the bestsellers list week one. Please, please, please pre-order right away. Thank you, Common Ground, for that fantastic suggestion. Rasmus Royceved is back. Get Stephen. Oh, you know what? I thought you were going to tell me that you asked your girlfriend that to marry you, and she said yes. That's not what you're back for. Get Stephen Kotkin on your show. I Should I be ashamed that I don't know who that is? Who is Stephen Kotkin? I don't know who that is. Maybe you can email me the name, because I might forget. And if he's interesting, I'd be happy to have him on. Nick K is back. Thanks. Last question. You get $200,000 not taxed and are allowed to buy one original copy in that special shop you encountered. One original copy, you mean of a book? Oh, if that's what you mean, come on. Origin of Species, no question. Although the Origin of Species that I saw, if you're referring to that antiquarian bookstore that I went into in Florida last year, that Origin of Species is $400,000. So if we've got some super uh, wealthy, I've always thought, why isn't there some super billionaire who says, I know many billionaires, I know several, believe me, I even know some very truly, truly wealthy people personally. And of course, you can't go to them and say, hey, come on, if you give me $5 million, It's not even the interest that you make on your money. But you often think about the old days of the Medici. Remember the Medici family in Florence, where they were the patrons to the arts, to science, and so on, right? Michelangelo can't do what he did, if he didn't have a patron. Da Vinci couldn't do what he. And so I often think, imagine. I mean, all of you guys here who are giving, donations to your means, I'm infinitely grateful. If it's $1, that's great. Thank you. Uh, but imagine someone who's wealthy just says, you know what, I love this guy. I love what he stands for. I love what he's done here. And by the way, a lot of these super racist guys, Ibrahim Kendi and all these, they're getting $10 million and $100 million from Jeff Bezos and so on. In what world does such an asshole, a racist guy who's spreading a racist message, get, well, because those billionaire donors are woke. They want to give 10, $20 million to some black guy who's an utter imbecile, because it appears as though they're not racist. They're helping the cause. They're helping an intellectual of color. Well, how about, if you know of a billionaire, give me that escape velocity so I can set up online courses, so I can set up all kinds of exciting projects, a great minds platform where all I do all day is create intellectual content, where I could spend all day every day doing nothing but pumping out books and papers. That would be the dream. So to answer your question, it would have to be Origin of Species first edition. I don't know if there are any available Origin of Species first edition signed. I suspect that those would go for even, obviously, a lot more than 400,000, but that would probably be it for me. Thank you so much. Let's go on. I think, okay, so that was Nick K. Who else we got? Okay, hold on a second. Can I ask my, oh, can I ask my local library to order your book? How? Well, you'd have to go. Thank you so much, be Dad Sad, for your contribution and question. I think there must be some portal whereby you can make recommendations, and there must be some automatized way. I don't know how, but I know for sure, it's been now a few months, that on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon, .uk, the book is available for pre-order, so you can probably find the link and suggest it to your library. Okay, do we have anybody else? Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. I've covered everybody. Okay, guys, unless there are any more questions, let me just make sure that I didn't miss anybody. I'm always paranoid that I missed somebody who gave a donation. At Lebanese, Ayad Sultan, they were doing the same thing with falafel. Okay, I guess there's a little fight going on with tabbouleh and falafel. I'll stay out of that. Some of the biggest fights come up when Israelis and Lebanese people, or when Israelis have the gall to say that falafel is Israeli. Yeah, I'm going to have to call bullshit on that. Uh, Falafel is Lebanese, and I'm Jewish, but I'm also honest. Falafel is Lebanese, it's not Israeli. Okay. Hammer Down Protocol 2049. Wow, what a name. Thank you so much for your contribution. Do you have any musical or artistic ability? Wow, what a fantastic question. Artistic ability? No. Now, what do I mean by that? Can I draw? My drawing ability is literally, I'm not being funny, or I'm not being hyperbolic. My artistic ability drawing is at the level of a stickman. I can't draw beyond that of a 4-year-old child. My brain cannot translate an image to drawing. So in that sense, zero. But I have great appreciation for the art. So one of the courses that I took as an undergrad, when I was in mathematics, pure mathematics and computer science, I mean, it doesn't get more technical than that, is I took a course in ceramics. And by the way, I talk about this in my forthcoming book, when I talk about, having intellectual variety seeking, trying different things as a pathway to a happy and content life. And so I talk about how I would try to dabble in all sorts of things. So I have a great love for art, I have an appreciation for aesthetics. I have, I think, a musical ear. I love music. I'm very passionate about music. I mean, some kinds of music more than others. But can I play the violin? Do I know, do I play the piano? Absolutely zero. The only thing I could do well is to just because I have rhythm, I can play the derbeke, which is like a kind of an Arabic, Middle Eastern kind of tam tam drums with my hands, just because again I'm rhythmic, so I can do that naturally. But I've never taken courses. I've never, so so I think I've got an appreciation for the arts. I've got an aesthetic eye. In Arabic, you say "andi zo." I have taste, and in this case, it applies to aesthetic taste. I have musical ability. I can quickly detect, a song that seems like it's going to be a hit. But no, I've got no talents, zero zip. And in part, I think to go back to our earlier question is because my entire career has been, when I was a kid, I played soccer. I was good in school, and then as I progressed, you know, that's what I do. I exercise. I love to train. I love soccer. I love books. I love intellectual. So I didn't develop some of these other skills as much as I would love to. For example, even in my reading, I'm not a very accomplished fiction reader. Now, I probably read more than most people, but if you listed me the 100 top works of fiction, it might shock you that a lot of them I haven't read. On the other hand, nonfiction, I'm a machine. Okay, so yeah. So to answer your question, no, I do not have any artistic or musical abilities. Okay, I think I've answered everybody. Okay, guys, you guys are fantastic. Anything else? Does it help to be a jock so that people are afraid that you'll beat them? I don't know if that was meant to me. Well, what I can tell you is that having been both a jock and a geek, allowed me to navigate through all of the cliques in high school. I was loved by the intellectual guys, by the artistic folks. Of course, I was the star soccer player. So, you know, it, the, when you're a kid, the best way for everybody to appreciate you is if you're the top guy in a important sport. I mean, right? Not badminton or bowling. No disrespect to those sports. I love bowling. I love badminton. But, you're the star soccer player. The girls are going to like you. The guys are going to respect you. So I think for me, it really did help that I was fortunate enough to, not be the geeky, wimpy academic type. Uh, there you go. Okay, guys. So, Gad, will you make a hardcover version for your new book with your own artistic made drawing? Well, no, that book is already gone. By the way, Ayad Sultan, no fight, Dr. Jad. It's not Jad. A lot of Middle Easterners think that my name is Jad. It's not. It's not a Egyptianized version of Jad. Gad is a Hebrew name. It's one of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's in the Bible. So it's not Jad, it's Gad. There you go. By the way, my last guest on my show, Astronomani, who's a lovely Muslim woman, the way she kept saying, I just posted our chat yesterday on my channel. You should go watch it. Astronomani, she's a real honey badger. I think it's very intimate when they're speaking to you, keeps saying your name, God. And I think that's really a lovely touch. It demonstrates intimacy. But the way she said my name also was really quite lovely. All right. Are we done, guys? Hi, Dr. Sad. Any diet advice? I'm not seeing El Polo Hermano any super chats. It's two-way, Chacha. It's two-way. I give wisdom. I give my time. You put a little thing in the jar. Time is money. Michael Marmorstein is back. Third time. Thank you so much. What material is your whip of self-flagellation made of, and where can I get one? Do you have any scars? Let me tell you something. So when I first started, I used to use a belt. Okay. And that's why they each have different names. Then I said, let's mix it up. I took the mosquito swatter and I started using that. So you can go back to my channel and you'll see some of my self-flagellations are with my belt. Some are with a mosquito fly swatter. And then I received an email, not an email, a letter, a package from a fan who, by the way, happened to be a commercial captain, airline pilot, because he left me his card. He said, well, I need you to classy it up. I want to raise your self-flagellation. So he's the one who gave me that whip, because a lot of people say, I guess we're understanding the sexual fetishes that happen in the sad bedroom. I wish it were as spicy as that. Now, I'm not saying that they're not used for other purposes, but I'm saying is that it's not me who went out and purchased that thing. It was a gift from a fan. By the way, you should see some of the incredible gifts that I've received from fans. It's just, it really is amazing, right? Because when you start in your academic career, you wonder what your trajectory is going to be, and to now be able to connect with so many people, whether it be in this forum, whether it be on my channel, on Joe Rogan, whether it be you're walking down the street, people are coming up to you. I'm truly blessed to have been able to, have such a positive influence on so many people, and I hope to continue to be able to do so. On that note, I think we're at the 2 hour mark. Guys, what a pleasure. Thank you all, even the ones who, for whatever reason, weren't able to donate. I forgive you. Maybe next time. If you haven't done so, please, please, please consider pre ordering the book. Even if you then end up changing your mind, you can change your mind, but I hope you don't. Pre-order the book right now, The Sad Truth About Happiness, 8 Secrets for Leading the Good Life. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you so much. Really had a lot of fun. I think I really need to make one change. I need to make this into a regular time slot so that more people learn when it's happening, rather than me doing my impulsive, silly thing, which is, every Monday at 4 o'clock we do this, because I just would love for more people to come to this forum. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the week. I am enriched by all of your support and love, and talk to you soon. Thanks so much, guys. Cheers. Take care. Bye.